All right. Oh, hey. All right. How you doing, love tubers? I'm glad to be back. Um, I'm going to start on the science of money. We're going to go into chapter 4. We just covered, not yesterday, but the day before, the science of spending. We are now going to cover the science of debt. All right. I'm not going to lie. That science of spending was very informative. It gave me lots of ideas, things I didn't know about that was in that chapter. I was thinking about how to apply them later. I've already started applying some of the tactics. So I am super excited to see what I'm about to learn in the science of debt. Just tuning in, happy Black History Month, by the way. All right. All right, so the science of debt. Any area of the science of money that the vast majority of people experience is debt. Vast majority. It's common to every income class and every age bracket. Yet, did you know that not all debt is created equal? Did you know that the wealthy incur very different kinds of debt than the vast majority of people in the lower and middle classes? Okay. What is the best way to get out of the hole of consumer debt? This is a good question. And this is Dan asking Brian. Brian, let's begin by having you describe your own experience with debt, both as a young man and now as a wealthy business owner. Did you ever struggle with it? If yes, how did you finally get out of the hole of consumer debt? And if not, what principles did you live by in order to remain debt-free? Ask a lot of questions. 1, 2. Okay, good. Brian, when I finished high school, I did not graduate, so I could only work at laboring jobs. So there was no real problem about getting into debt because no one would lend me any money. I had no credit cards. I had only enough money in the bank to be able to pay my expenses, and I had to pay for everything with cash. I worked for several years. I traveled overseas. I visited 80 countries by Shank's Pony. Shank's Pony. All right, y'all. Hello, love too. As it was called, hitchhiking, traveling on buses and trucks, stopping work here and there to make enough money to go on. I'm so glad he explained that because I was truthfully wondering what on earth Shank's Pony was. Even when I started to make better money in sales, it was all payable pretty much in cash because I was working overseas at the time. Oh, nice. I had money in the bank, but never any debt. Time passed and I started my own business. I joke that when you start your own business, you learn how to sell again. I sold my house, I sold my car, I sold my furniture, I sold everything I owned, plus I used all the savings that I had to be able to accumulate. Sold everything. I rented a small office because when you start your own business, unless you are starting with a lot of money, you can go straight off a cliff. Whew. There's a rule that everything costs twice as much as you expect and takes 3 times as long. So if you think you're going to break even in 6 months, it's going to be 12 months. Thank you, Brian. Everything is going to cost more. Things that you never imagined. Even when you make your very best budget and gross up to 50 to 100%, you're still going to be surprised. Surprise! As a result, I got deeply into debt. I had borrowed some money. I had ordered supplies, printing, mailing, furniture, utility supplies from different companies, and I thought everything was going great. I went through all the money. Oh my gosh. And then the money was gone. Poof. That's when they started ringing my doorbell, phoning me, harassing me, all of that. It was calls, bills, harassers all the time, and I was really panicking. No peace of mind. We had no money for anything. We were living in a rented house and I was scrambling the whole time, so I had to retrench. When you start a new business, lots of people borrow from their friends, borrow from their relatives, run up every credit card to the maximum. In my case, I had to borrow against my car and all kinds of things. You know what? I have never looked up Brian Tracy's net worth, but I'm going to do that after this chapter. I sat down and real net worth. I had sat down and realized I was going to have to dig myself out of this debt or go bankrupt. I thought that if I worked really hard, I could do it. The first thing was to go to my bank. It was something like a 1-year revolving loan, which had to be paid off. I had borrowed from the bank when I had a house. Now I had no house, but I still owed bank payments. This is going to be interesting. Then I read that if you keep the loan current with regard to interest, it's not on the books of the bank as a bad loan. They don't have to report it, so they don't have to seize property or assets. I went to the bank manager and I said, look, I cannot make principal payments, but I can make interest payments on this loan until my business recovers, which it should in the next 3 to 6 months. This is some good stuff. He said, as long as you can make interest payments, Brian, then it's not a problem with me because it appears as a good loan. Then I went to each of my creditors and I said, look, I've got this problem. I owe all this money and I cannot pay you off, but I will pay you a small amount each month as a sign of good faith. And I will pay it all off in 12 months if you just roll with me for a while. Every one of them, without exception, said, okay, if you make us a good faith payment every month, we'll roll with you. I owe thousands of dollars. I'd be paying $50 a month. I went back to work, and within 6 months, business had turned around. I was able to pay off all my debts, got all my loans current, and got everything else into shape. It was a terrible 1.5 years, but I never went into debt again. We said previously, nonsense to say, don't spend your money when you start your own business. Because to get started, you often have to spend every penny that you can beg, borrow, and steal. Everything that you own or ever accumulated, according to Forbes magazine, 80% of new businesses go broke within 2 years. Whew. Perform. They say every new business is a race against time. Do you figure out how to make more money than it's costing you before you run out of money? Imagine a plane that's in a dive. It's going toward the ground and it's going faster and faster towards the ground. That is what's happening to your business, like a spiral. You must find a way to pull it out of the dive where you start to actually bring in more money than it's costing you. You just barely pull it out of the dive and then you start to climb again. The rule in business is it takes you 2 years to break even and 2 more years to pay back the amount of money that you borrowed in the first 2 years. Whew. Thank you for tuning in, y'all. No business, according to Peter Drucker, I need to look him up, makes a profit until 4 years out. If you plan for anything other than that, you're crazy. Someone told me that it's 2, 2, and 3, 2 years to break even, 2 more years to get even when you're destined, 3 more years to burst into the open sky and start to make a profit. So it's good to have enough money to carry yourself for 2 years or you'll crash. So really 3. When I heard that, I said, that's nonsense. That's not going to happen to me. I'm different. I'm superior. It took 7 years, and everybody I ever speak to you talks about that 7-year rule. It costs twice as much and takes 3 times as long as you thought. It takes 2 years to break even, 2 years to pay back, 7 years total to make a profit. Oh, 7 years. When a person finally becomes a successful entrepreneur, they've been through all those phases. When you see these stories about people who become wealthy very quickly in Silicon Valley, it's only happening because of the absolute miracles in technology. We're living through an incredible age, but remember there are 30 million businesses in the U.S., and of those, there are probably 100,000 in high tech, while most of the other 29 million are small to medium-sized businesses with people trying to sell stuff and stay alive. I'm going to pause and breathe real quick. Whew. Okay. Continue. Dan. Brian, we've alluded to the fact that there are different kinds of debt. That's what we might call good debt and bad debt. This is Dan asking the question. Please clearly describe the difference between these two kinds of debts and give us the most specific examples. Brian. We've talked about this before. Good debt is debt that pays for itself. For instance, if you buy products to resell, if you invest in advertising that brings you customers to buy you product, if you train your staff so they can sell more of your stuff, and if you invest in traveling to meet with clients and have you put it on a credit card, this is all money that has expected return on investment. Bad debt is where you spend the money and it's gone forever. They talked about consumer debt in the last chapter for chapter 3. If you want to go ahead and visit it, it's already on my Science of Money playlist. All right, we just closed our main offices because we've reorganized our business. We opened offices that are twice the size but are much better designed for us as a digital marketing business. Our employees wanted open space, modern furniture. Previously, I had traditional offices, traditional desk furniture. I paid tens of thousands of dollars for beautiful furniture, mahogany desk, all top notch. Well, that's a jump up from last chapter because he bought everything used. All right, now it was time to dispense with all of this, and we asked if anybody would like to buy it. They didn't even want it for free. That is what you might call bad debt. I think so. Let me put a little diamond here. In a couple of cases, we had to agree to pay to ship it over to them so they could accept it for free. That's losing money. The whole office was basically stripped down to nothing, and we didn't make a penny on tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. That's bad debt. There's no return on it. I'm taking notes, y'all, while I'm talking to y'all. Good. Bad. We also made the mistake, as many companies do, of ordering too much product. Because you think you're going to sell so much and then you don't. But you still have to pay for the product. You've got 30 or 60-day payment plans in a warehouse full of product, and the products are not moving. Many companies go bankrupt because they've stocked too much inventory. That's another example of bad debt. Inventory. Why would you do that? It's because you can get lower prices if you buy in volume. Warehouse. But it's much better at the beginning to buy smaller quantities. Well, I just attended a team meeting the other day that said to buy wholesale in volume at the warehouse. So this is good advice right here. Even though you pay higher prices and have lower profit, at least you're not exposed, your cash is not gone, you don't end up with a warehouse full of dead stock. Dead stock kills business, so that's another place where you can get bad debt. You've got this stock, and if you don't convert it into sales very quickly, it can drag your business down. That kind of bad debt is a major reason companies go broke. Dan. Let's talk a little bit about some forms of consumer bad debt. We've talked a bit about credit cards with their high interest rates. Extended car loans are very big right now. We can go out to 72 months or more, and there are forms of home equity lines of credit. Can you address these, and how can these be temptations for bad debt if they're not used properly? Consumer bad debt. All right, so that's 3. Brian, the credit card industry makes its profit on interest payments, and the interest payments can run from 18 to 23%. That is high, or even more. There are all kinds of hidden payments, late payment fees, and so on. So the only way to use a credit card is to pay it off every month. Put a 411 there. Credit card debt is the highest cost debt that you can possibly have, and there may be billions of dollars on it. That's one of the worst forms of personal debt. Somebody called me the other day and asked me if I could pay something with a credit card. I said, I don't even have a credit card. My credit cards are paid off. Extended car loans are another kind of bad debt. Basically, you're buying too much car. Extended car loan. Too much car. Ooh, I guess I gotta work on that next. You should be able to pay off a car in 36 months so that if it takes any longer than that, you're buying too much car. Buy less car, get your ego under control. Smack. Regarding a home equity line of credit, so this is a credit card. We talked about the car. Regarding a home equity line of credit, home equity, it doesn't cost anything if you don't use it. So they like you to use it. I have a home equity line of credit, but it basically costs $250 a year. A home equity line of credit is really good cushion if you're running a business and they'll not give your company a line of credit. Use a home equity line if you have one. Just make sure that the carrying costs are very low and read the fine print. Those details are important. I want to touch again on buying furniture on credit cards. Oh my. He really tired of furniture. Or credit plans. When I was young and foolish, I went to a furniture store and they had all these great deals. So I furnished my entire apartment. They had their own financing plan, just sign here, sign there. It was 24% a year. I had no idea that it was almost like mafia rates. But that's exactly how they made their money. They sold used furniture, and they financed it themselves at 24%. You had to make a down payment. I didn't realize that until I started to get the bills. I thought, oh my God, if I carry this stuff out for 3 years, I'll end up having paid twice as much. So I paid it all down. This is good because it's tax time before y'all go and buy furniture. Y'all needed to hear this. Welcome, love tubers. Whenever you get into a financial commitment, take the time to bring the documents home, sit down and read them, and go through them bit by bit. Read. If you don't understand something, demand a full explanation, because some of these documents are written by geniuses to confuse average people. So you won't understand what this subclause means. That goes for car warranties too, just to let you know from experience. For instance, with credit cards, it might say 0% interest for the first 6 months, but that's only if you pay off 100% each month or if you carry a $2,000 balance. Read the fine print because you can get trapped. It can say 0% or 1% per month or 12% per year and so on. Also, be very careful when they call you on the phone and make special offers through your credit card or your telephone plans or anything else. Credit card. Telephone. These special offers on the phone are usually outrageously priced and include 50 to 80% commission for the people phoning you. They try to get you into stuff that you have no need of. Extra insurance, extended warranties on cars, technical equipment like computers and cell phones. These can be outrageously expensive and are of no value at all. That chapter was deep. I ain't even done with the chapter yet. That's deep. Dan, can you clarify how each of these forms of debt can be used responsibly? For example, credit cards that are paid off in full each month, lines of credit for business investments, shorter car loans that are easily affordable, etc. Let's emphasize that for those who don't have the discipline to use them responsibly. I love you, Dan. I like Dan. It is better to stay away from these forms of debts entirely. Thank you, Dan. Give Dan some sugar in this book. All right, Brian. This is going to depend a lot on your credit rating and your savvy, but there are three different recommendations. One is called debt consolidation. Debt consolidation means they'll put all your debts together with one company and that you only owe money and make payments to that one company. Although there are lots of companies that do this, you have got to be careful because they make big commissions on consolidating your debt. The companies that do this make a profit. Almost all people who do this consolidation get into trouble. It can seem like they've gotten off easy, and as a result, they begin again spending beyond their means. This leads to another default and another debt consolidation. Debt consolidation is one. Another way, two. Suggested by financial author Dave Ramsey, I like Dave, to make a list of everything that you owe and pay off the smallest debt first. It's a good idea because it gives you psychological momentum to pay off a small debt and cross it off your list and pay off the next debt and cross it off your list. Another recommendation I especially like is to pay off the highest interest debt first. Look at your credit cards. Some are charging you 18% and 23% and 30%. Pay off the ones that are charging the highest interest first. Dedicate all of your savings to that one. Some people say pay a little bit and a little bit there. I would say pay minimum payments on the others, just keep them current. Oh, that's smart. They cannot come after you as long as you're making the minimum payments. Once you have decided to get out of debt, there's a series of strategies that you can use. Strategy. One is to begin saving your money, the rule, George Carson's rule, is to pay yourself first, which means that you save 10% or more of your income every month. 10%. But if you're deeply in debt, you have to start off small, and there are two ways to do this. Brian is rational. Let us say that you are in debt and you want to save money as well as get out of debt. But you can't save 10% per month. I'm going to slow this down. What I recommend is to start saving 1% and live on the other 99%. People are creatures of habit. So if you can take 1% and save it at the beginning of each month, right off the top of your paycheck, you'll be quite comfortable living on 99%. Second month, save 2%. Third month, save 3%. Key. Over the course of a year, you can build up to saving 12%. And the tightening of your standard of living will be so small that you won't even notice it. It may be one latte a day. Then write down everything that you spend so that you're cognizant of the fact that you're spending this money. Just writing it down will cause you not to spend it. Then you save that money as you begin to save money and begin to develop a financial freedom account. Something remarkable happens to your debts. Your mind space changes, your attitude toward debt changes, and you stop accumulating debt. It's often recommended that you cut up your credit cards and pay cash for everything. I don't recommend that. Okay? It's a bit severe, but it's quite inconvenient to be getting cash all the time. I carry 3 credit cards. I have all kinds of credit cards that I never use, but I only use 3 plus a debit card, and I keep everything paid off every single month. If you don't, it can accumulate, and quickly. I learned the hard way. I carry no credit card debt at all. So 3 cards plus a debit for convenience purposes. The other thing about getting out of debt is that you begin to save 1% a month. You find yourself spending less and less on debt. It may take you 2 to 3 years, but then you'll reach the point where you're out of debt completely and then you never get back in. I've spoken to countless people who have done this and it changes their lives. When you're in debt, it causes you to feel inferior, anxious, insecure, and negative. Let's look at the difference between 2 people talking. One has money in the bank and the other is in debt. The person with the money in the bank is more confident, more positive, more outspoken. The person who owes money feels a little bit inferior. They're more cautious, they're more obsequious toward the person who's got the money. When you get out of debt, it transforms your personality. Most people who've done it never get back in. You can do it just 1% per month. And if you practice some of the other things we talk about in terms of increasing your income, it will start to go up. As your income goes up, you save that money instead of spending it and pay down your debt. Dan, Brian, are you a believer in carrying a mortgage rather than paying it off right away? Is it a good idea to accumulate payments? Brian, there are many schools of thought. We have a 3% mortgage on our house. And there's no place that you could invest money at 3% interest. If you have a low interest rate, it is better to carry the house mortgage, especially in today's real estate market as home prices are going up faster than the payments that you're making. So it is an investment because it actually is increasing in value. Another strategy is to pay off your mortgage completely or make extra payments. Let's say you get bonuses, sales commissions, or chunks of cash. You can use those to pay against your mortgage. Some people say if you make 2 principal payments a month, you can pay off the mortgage in half the time. That is a good strategy for people because it does not cut into their lifestyle, although it requires a bit of sacrifice. But it takes a 30-year mortgage down to 15 years, and then you own the property free and clear. Dan, today another big topic of debate is college loans. Ooh, child, I got one of you. Let's discuss college debt. Some look at it as bad debt, others look at it as good debt because you're investing in yourself for the future. I was just doing some in-depth regarding on the return of investment for various courses of study. This is Brian. The STEM courses, science, technology, engineering, and math, pay the most. They start at about $76,000 per year when you get out of school, and they go up to about $136,000 a year for petroleum engineers. Many courses people take are useless. Ooh, Brian. And when they come out, they're unemployable. In the last year, 54% of college students were still unemployed 1 year after graduating from college because the courses that they took were useless. They're not taking courses that increase their earning ability or enable them to get results that a company is willing to pay for. So, what are they borrowing the money for? It's like going to Las Vegas. If you're borrowing the money to buy a home there and Las Vegas prices are going up 7 to 8% now after the recession, that's a good investment. If you're borrowing the money to go to the casino, that's not a good investment. People who are borrowing money to take useless courses are making a bad investment because half of them will be working at minimum wage job for the next couple of years. Science, technology, engineering, and math. Okay. %80 of college students never, 80%, never work in their field of major after they leave college. They'll never go back to it because the courses that they took are basically entertainment courses. Their excuses to stay at the university and play with your friends and have parties and drink and everything else. That's the difference between good college debt and bad and poor college debt. A person who borrows to go to medical school or to get an engineering degree is very smart because they're going to be able to pay off the whole darn thing in 2 to 3 years. If you don't have a good income because you've got a minimum wage job because you took a useless course, then that's very bad debt. There are some people in their 30s who still cannot buy a house and they can't get credit for a car, they can't start a business, and they can't get a bank loan because this college debt overhangs them like an avalanche. Dan, does it matter what school we invest in? Would it be better to go to an Ivy League school or is somebody better off going to an accredited college program? Dan is not playing with us. Not at all. Brian either. Brian, fortunately, President Obama is insisting that for the first time in history, colleges actually report the amount that their graduates are earning 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years after graduating in a particular course of study. Those figures become publicly available. The colleges and universities are fighting it, screaming and kicking because they don't want people to know these numbers. Fortunately, again, if you go on Google, there are some very good assessments of how much a person is likely to make with a degree from a particular college. His net worth is $15 million. He's never been to college. He did not graduate. It does not list Dan's net worth, but he is the author of 39 books and president of Inspire Productions. The base pay for a bachelor's degree in business administration, the base pay is $64,812. I just read a study on this where they looked at the top 10 best universities and the worst 10 in terms of return on investment. If you go to Harvard, for example, and you take a degree in law or finance or economics, your chances of getting a good, high-paying job quickly are very high. Harvard is one of the best. Yale happens to be the worst. Ooh, Brian. If you have a degree from a prestigious university, but it is useless subjects, it's not going to help you very much to get a high-paying job. All this information is universally available. You need to do your homework. They show you what the lowest paying faculties are and what the highest paying faculties are. It's your job to do research before you get into debt. Just as if you were going to invest in a company, you have to be sure that the company is going to have high levels of sales and profitability, and you will pay dividends to justify the investment in the first place. Dan, do you think that people should be contributing to a 401k and or contributing to a savings account if they had any bad consumer debt? Why or why not? In other words, if they have credit card debt and they're contributing to a 401k, is that a smart thing to do? Concurrently try to pay down a little bit here and there and pay the 401k over there? Or should you just get all the debt off before you put one penny into the 401k? Again, this is Brian. It depends upon your individual situation, how much you're earning, how much discretionary cash you have. A 401k is generally considered to be one of the best investments because it's completely pre-tax and it's often matched. That is, if you put $1, your employer will put 50 cents or $1. You get a 2-4, and that's money, and that money can accumulate. Money on the table. That's what I call that. Money on the table. Most people later on in life say the biggest regret they have is they did not start putting money into a 401k early enough. They should have done it right from the very beginning of their careers. They could have ended up financially independent. Dan, do you believe in the concept described by debt reduction and financial freedom expert Dave Ramsey of putting as much money toward debt and utilizing the snowball method to get out of debt completely? Do you think it's a good idea to set a goal of being totally debt-free? Or does such frugal living take away from the creativity and sometimes the leverage required to be successful on a larger scale? The snowball method. I'm just going to call it the snowball. Here I'm thinking of the entrepreneur who starts a business by mortgaging the house or maxing out a couple of credit cards versus the person who spends years getting out of debt, but as a result never gets that business idea off the ground. Is there a way to strike a balance? Ooh, balance. Come on, balance. Brian. The most important requirement for success in life, especially business, is self-discipline, hard work, and self-discipline. Dave Ramsey's approach requires tremendous self-discipline. Self-discipline is manifested in delayed gratification. Successful people are those who are able to delay gratification in short term in order to enjoy financial security in the long term. Ramsey's approach almost forces you into a form of boot camp. You are to be very disciplined about your finances. Since your habits are going to determine your success, if you are disciplined about paying things off, and getting out of debt and being very strict on yourself, you're probably going to be a vastly better business partner. You're going to make better business decisions. You're going to be more thorough and careful about taking on debt expenses. So I think it would be to your benefit. Okay. Everything that helps a person to develop self-discipline and to delay gratification in the short term builds their character, their persistence, tenacity, their thoroughness, and builds their best qualities overall. It's a really good idea if you can do it, but it's very hard to do. That's why most people don't do it. Dave Ramsey, I think, is being very clear and very strict. If you're serious, then go whole hog. It's just as if you're going to lose weight, then you can cut back to 2,000 calories a day, and you can stay at 2,000 calories a day for 1 year, and you don't have exceptions. A good friend of mine was overweight. I've known him for 30 years. He'd been overweight the whole time, about 30 to 40 pounds. Then I saw him a couple of months ago and he was trim almost like an athlete. And I said, I've known you all your life. What on earth happened? He said he'd gotten into one of those calorie counter apps. And it tells you you're only allowed 2,000 calories a day. You have to mark down every single food and the number of calories. And at a certain point, it says, stop. You cannot have any more calories today. If you eat all your calories by noon, then you're going to starve until breakfast the next morning. He said you only have to do that a couple of times before you start spreading the calories across the whole day. Final calories are 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, so you get to sleep. He said that if you're strict with yourself, it doesn't take long to get into the habit of consuming 2,000 calories a day. The average adult consumes 3,000 calories a day. Interesting. If you take in 3,000 and you burn up 4,000, then you're going to lose 1,000 calories a day. And over time, gradually the extra weight goes away. It's the most amazing thing. But you have to be really strict with yourself. I don't have a highlighter. That's okay. 411. That's what the Ramsey method is. Be really strict with yourself. Develop the habit of being frugal and careful with money. If you do this for a year or two, you'll be careful with money for the rest of your life because it becomes an ingrained habit. Oh, good. In terms of business, you've talked about your own experience in the early days, and you hear how this is very common with entrepreneurs. They max out every credit card, they go through home equity, and so forth. There are some people who say it's possible to start and run a business debt-free from the beginning without having to go those methods. Is it realistic to be debt-free when starting a business? Brian said yes. Welcome, love tubers, if you just tuned in. The most important key to success in business is sales. If you have a business where you can start selling stuff that you get on consignment, then you can actually launch your business today and be generating revenues before you pay anything. There are many websites where you can buy products wholesale and then you can develop your own website and sell them. So you don't buy them from the supplier until you have the sale in hand. The most popular of these is MLM, multi-level marketing or network marketing. You can start in network marketing with a very small investment for a sample kit. From then on, you can take your samples and sell the product, get the order, and buy the product, deliver it, and make a profit in between. You can take your samples, sell the product, get the order, then buy the product, deliver it, and make a profit in between. The critical thing is sales ability, so you can actually start with nothing and sell your way to success. It's called bootstrapping. It's got a name. Where you start with your own money and you grow out of your own profits. It's a slower way to start a business, but it's often the best way. Because if you don't have any extra money, you are forced to sell immediately. You are forced to be creative, to fall back on hard work and self-discipline. What killed all those .com, .bombs was that they had too much money too soon, and they burned through all of it. Thank you, Brian, that I did not have to learn this lesson by myself. And did. All right. In fact, I just read of a company that had raised $400 million in venture capital in Silicon Valley. Before they could ever make a sale, they were out of money and the investors lost it all. They had what seemed like a great idea, but they just never got around to selling the product. Start off by selling the product first. Sometimes you can sell products for another company. Like on Amazon, you can sell another brand besides your own. You'll sell for them and make commission on the sale. That's what I do. You can start your business if you can sell. That's the only way that I know of to do it. And it's a very popular way. This would be a good time to tell y'all about that Amazon influencer program. You should join that. You get commission if somebody makes a sale. All right, Dan. The final idea for this chapter, Brian, comes to the point where someone has paid off all their debt. They've finally gotten all the weight off. We know how many people get weight off, but the weight comes right back on again. The question here is, how do you get to a point where an unexpected huge expense doesn't throw the whole thing off again so you're back in debt? No return to debt. How many months of saving would you recommend someone have in a bank account to keep an unsustainable expense from throwing their system into orbit? We call this the law of three. Brian. There are 3 legs to the stool of financial freedom. They are saving, insurance, and investment. The best way is to go through them one at a time. First is savings. You need between 2 to 6 months of normal expenditures put aside, so that if you lost your job, you'd be able to continue with your current standard of living for 2 to 6 months. If you have that, you have tremendous confidence in dealing with your world. I've spoken with countless people to whom I've given this advice. I think I can make it. If you have that, you have tremendous confidence in dealing with your world. I've spoken with countless people to whom I've given this advice, and they went back and they darn well did it. It took them a year to get 2 months of saving put aside. They were really strict with themselves. They got a new boss, or their old boss became the tyrant, or the company began to increase their hours and reduce their pay. And they said, "Phooey," and they walked away. They could do it because they had the money in the bank, whereas their coworkers had stayed there and take the new and had to stay there and take the new negative conditions. 2 to 6. I remember a woman who wrote to me about this. She had thought the purpose of her income was to go out and spend it on clothes, cosmetics, and have a good time. But when she heard my advice, she realized that she was trapped. If she didn't have a paycheck every month, she would be desperate. She literally stopped from spending for a year instead of transfer her life because now she had this money. The second thing you need to do is insure properly. This is so important. An accountant friend of mine said to insure against anything that you can't write a check for, so you get health insurance. I was talking recently to someone who had let his health insurance go. What? Okay, health. To save money for skiing, he had let his health to save money for skiing. He had let his health insurance lapse. And then he broke his back while skiing. He was laid up for 6 months and then recuperating for 6 more months of physical therapy. It set back his whole life because he had let his health insurance expire. I did just really read that. I did. For skiing. Okay, let's keep it moving. You need automobile insurance, both collision and liability. You need complete home insurance. Again, if your home burned down, you couldn't write a check for it. Health, car. You went to an insurance agency and said, "Here's our life. What do we need?" Their experience, they said, "You need to be insured here. You don't need this much insurance there. You could do with this much insurance here, but you want some of that there." They walked through and they bought different policies from different agencies for different matters and so on, and we've never had a single financial problem. He canceled his insurance to go skiing. Okay. And of course, raising 4 children over 30 years, you have a lot of unexpected reversals. So it's really important to have the right insurance simultaneous with accumulating 2 to 6 months income. Be sure that you insure properly. Don't listen to these people that say insurance is gambling against yourself. You also need life insurance. So that's 4. Health, car, home, life. If you're the primary breadwinner for your family, you need insurance to be able to take care of your family for the indefinite future if something should happen to you. By the way, this gives you a tremendous psychological boost and great peace of mind. It also makes you stronger and more forceful, more positive in the rest of your life to know that that your back and your family's back are completely covered. You are far more confident taking greater risk. Dan. Brian, to wrap up this chapter, Are there any ideas or concepts on debt that we have not touched on? He gets all in. Go ahead, Dan. Let me summarize our discussion about debt. Because I have been deeply in debt and I know the psychological and emotional implications. Laying awake at night for fear of having your home repossessed, parking your car 2 blocks away so that it's not picked up by the repo people. This is an awful way to live, and yet many times you run into this situation. If it happens, and it's happened to you. Just make a decision to get out of debt and stay out of debt for life. Your motto going forward is, I'm going to live debt-free for life. Then sit down and make a plan and move this to the top of your list of priorities. This isn't something you're going to do someday. This is something you're going to do now. If you're married, sit down with your spouse and make a list of every single asset that you have and for every expense you have on a monthly basis. Rent, utilities, gasoline, food, everything, and then make a list of every debt and lay it out on paper. Trail. I have said that you become what you think about most of the time. Self-made millionaires are people like you, but who at one time decided, I'm going to be wealthy, and then they did it. You never become wealthy prior to making that decision. If you do make the decision, you back it up with action. It's almost impossible for you not to become financially independent because there are so many ways to achieve it. Whew. They found out how much time people who are suffering financial problems spend thinking about their money each month. They think about 24 hours a day. They think about it, they talk about it, they whine about it, they cry about it, they fight about it, they argue about it, they drive along thinking about their financial problems all the time. Whew. But how much time do you spend actually sitting down, writing out, planning, and thinking about your financial destiny making plans? I'm going to call this crypto night. The answer is about 1 hour a month. People tend to sit down about 1 hour a month. It's mostly paying bills time. I've been through this where you sit down and say, all right, how much are we going to pay on this credit card this month? How much are we going to pay on this bill this month? You allocate the money until it's pretty much all gone and you get back to worrying about money for the next month. What do self-made millionaires do? They spend 10 hours a month or more sitting down. They read financial magazines. They read financial publications. They check out financial newsletters. They look at financial debt consolidations and investments. They spend 10 hours a month thinking about how to organize their financial lives better so they have 1,000%, 10 times advantage. Does it? They apparently read this book. Whew. If you're really serious about getting out of debt, even if you're not a detail person, make it a habit to buy a book or magazine on money. Listen to programs on money, audio programs, radio programs, and online. There are some fabulous programs on how people got out of debt. Make that a top priority that you are going to get out of debt and stay out of debt for the rest of your life. If you make that decision and write it down as a goal and make a plan and then really put some shoulder into thinking about it as much as possible, you'll be quite astonished at how you can transform the rest of your financial life. Whew. All right. Thank you for tuning in, Love Tubers. As always, it's a joy to have you. If this benefited you at all, please subscribe. I hope you're subscribed already, but if not, do subscribe and hit the like, smash that like button, baby. and share it with your friends if you think it'll benefit them. This was most informative. Leave comments below if you do have them. And again, thank you for tuning in and joining in with me. Well, we'll go through chapter 5 tomorrow. Have a beautiful rest of your evening.